My name is Nancy, and I am 58 years old. For most of my life, I believed the foundation of my world was built on two pillars: my husband of 35 years, Lawrence, and my baby sister, Gloria. We were a trio, a unit. My home in Portland was our anchor, with its wraparound porch and the sprawling garden of roses and lavender I had nurtured for decades. A quiet life, a good life. But 8 months ago, I took a misstep off a ladder while pruning the lilac tree. The fracture in my ankle was complicated, they said. The recovery would be long. That fall didn't just break a bone, it set in motion a sequence of events that would shatter my understanding of everything and everyone I held dear. It started with small things. A glance exchanged between my husband and my sister that lingered a second too long. A question about my finances that felt less like concern and more like an appraisal. And a doctor's appointment I never made for a specialist I never requested. Before I share what happened next, I have to ask you something. If you have ever had that feeling, that tiny cold whisper in your gut telling you something is not right, even when everyone around you is smiling and offering help, let me know down in the comments. Just type yes. And if you want to hear how a woman who loved her garden and her quiet books found the steel to protect it all, please hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. What comes next requires a steady heart. The initial warmth after my accident felt genuine. Lawrence, or Larry, as everyone calls him, fussed over me. He brought me tea, fluffed my pillows, helped me to the bathroom in the middle of the night. My sister Gloria visited almost daily, her arms laden with gourmet soups and glossy magazines. I was swaddled in their attention, grateful though. A part of me felt like a child again. But the texture of that care began to change subtly, like the light shifting before a storm. My world, which had once been the entire library branch I managed, and my 2-acre property, shrank to the confines of our living room and the endless procession of medical appointments. Larry took over all the driving. He said it was no trouble, but the destinations became peculiar, less about orthopedic follow-ups and more about consultations with geriatric specialist assessments for in-home care services I had not asked for. During one such visit, a gentle-voiced doctor with kind eyes asked me a series of questions that had nothing to do with my ankle. Who is the president? What year is it? Can you count backward from 100 by sevens? I felt a hot flush of embarrassment. Larry patted my hand. Just routine, darling, for your safety. Then Anna entered the picture. She was my physical therapist as sent by the agency. Young, with a bright smile and capable hands, she became my tether to the outside world, to normalcy. We would work on my exercises, and she would chat about her life, her boyfriend, her dreams of becoming a nurse practitioner. One Tuesday, as she guided my foot through a range of motion, she said offhandedly, "Your husband and your sister are so thorough. They asked me all sorts of questions last week about the criteria for full-time residential care, really doing their homework." She said it like a compliment. My blood turned to ice. I kept my face a mask of mild interest. "Oh, they're just worrywarts," I managed to say, my voice light as air. At home, Larry began a new refrain. "We need to simplify, Nancy. All this is too much for you." He gestured vaguely at the house, at the garden visible through the bay window. "The bills, the upkeep, let me handle it. We should get a joint power of attorney drawn up. Just a formality so I can pay the mortgage and the doctors without you having to sign a dozen checks." He mentioned my Aunt Florence often, my mother's sister who had dementia. "We don't want to be unprepared like that family was," he'd say, his tone grave. Gloria echoed him. She started bringing brochures for places with names like Sunset Meadows and The Gables. She would leave them on the coffee table, open to photos of smiling white-haired people doing puzzles. "I just came across these at work," she'd say. "Isn't this one lovely? Look at the gardens." Her gardens were manicured, sterile, nothing like my wild, blooming chaos. I started pretending to be more tired than I was. I would retreat to my room early, claiming the pain was worse just to be alone with my thoughts. The two pillars of my life were no longer holding me up. I was starting to feel they were quietly walling me in. The crack in my foundation became a chasm on a Thursday afternoon. Anna had to cancel our session. Larry was out, he said, meeting a client. Gloria was showing a property. For the first time in weeks, I was utterly alone in the house. The silence was a physical relief. I decided to be useful. I wanted a specific book, an old horticulture guide my father gave me, which I thought was on the top shelf in Larry's home office. Using my cane, I made my slow way there. The office always smelled like him of sandalwood soap and printer ink. The book was indeed up high. I reached for it, my cane hooked over the edge of the desk for balance. My fingers brushed the spine, and the book, along with a thick, unlabeled manila folder tucked behind it, came tumbling down. Papers scattered like autumn leaves across the Persian rug. A sigh of frustration died in my throat. I bent painfully to gather them, and then I stopped. My eyes scanned the top page. It was a printout, a form from the State Bar Association website. The title read, Petition for Determination of Incapacity and Appointment of Guardian. My hands began to shake. I sifted through the other pages. There was a draft of an email unsent addressed to an attorney named Robert Driscoll. Per our conversation, it read, I am moving forward with securing a durable power of attorney for both health care and finances. My wife's condition is deteriorating rapidly, though she is in denial. I need the process to be as swift and clear-cut as possible. Her sister is in full agreement and will corroborate. It was dated 2 weeks prior, but it was the final piece of paper that stole the air from my lungs. It was a sheet of Gloria's distinctive lavender notepaper covered in her looping, hurried script. It was a crude flowchart. On one side, it listed my assets: House approx, 1.2 me. Charles Schwab Act approx, 475K. Mother's inheritance approx, 300K. Arrows led to a box in the center that said, Secure POA and Med Assess. From there, arrows branched out. One pointed to Rosewood Manor, $1 month. The other pointed to Liquidate Assets, split 50-50 after costs. And there in the margin was a note, L, must convince her Rosewood is best. Spoke to director, they have a suite. Move fast after placement. Sell house immediately. I sat on the floor, the cold from the hardwood seeping through my sweatpants. The room did not spin. It went utterly still and silent, as if all the sound had been sucked out of the world. I felt nothing at first, a blank white shock. Then a sensation so profound it was almost physical, a cracking open deep in my chest where trust had lived. It was not just a plan, it was a blueprint for my disposal. My husband and my sister had drawn a map to erase me from my own life. A strange calm descended. The frightened, ailing woman they thought I was would have screamed. She would have confronted them. That woman was gone. In her place was someone else, someone with everything to lose and a cold, clear understanding of the enemy. Very carefully, I took my cell phone from my pocket. I photographed every page, every damning note. I made sure the images were sharp, the writing legible. Then, with meticulous care, I reassembled the folder exactly as I had found it, placed the book back on the shelf, and used my cane to lever myself up. I walked out of that office, down the hall, and into the kitchen. I poured myself a glass of water. My hand did not tremble. I was already planning. The first call I made was not to a friend. It was to Samuel Pearson. Sam had been my father's attorney and friend for 40 years. He had handled my parents' estate, my mother's will. He was in his 70s now, semi-retired, but his mind was sharp as a tack. I called him from my cell phone sitting on the back porch steps amidst my overgrown lavender, the scent usually so calming, now smelled cloying. Nancy, he answered, his voice warm with surprise. It's been too long. How's that ankle? Sam, I said, and my voice to my own ears sounded steady, distant. I need your help. I am in serious trouble, and it's coming from Larry and Gloria. I gave him the facts, concise and cold. The doctor's visits, the questions, the folder. I texted him the photos as I spoke. I heard his breathing change on the other end of the line from relaxed to alert. He was silent for a full minute after I finished. Then he said, "Nancy, listen to me very carefully. You cannot react. You cannot let them know you have found anything. Do you understand? Their entire plan relies on you being compliant, confused, and ultimately declared incapable. The moment you show your hand, they will adapt. They will become more aggressive, perhaps even dangerous." "What do I do?" I whispered, the first crack of fear showing. "You act," Sam said, his tone turning strategic, almost grim. "But you act the part they have written for you. You become the woman they think you are, only more so. You agree with everything. You lean into the fragility. Meanwhile, I will work on a solution on my end. They want a power of attorney. We will give them one to sign." "A what?" I couldn't keep the horror from my voice. "A Trojan horse, Nancy. A document that looks standard, even generous to a layman or a rushed attorney. But it will be drafted with specific fatal flaws. Flaws that a court would instantly invalidate if it were challenged. More importantly, we will control the signing. We will have our own notary present, one who understands the situation. We need them to commit to their plan on paper in front of a witness we trust. That is our evidence. That is our trap." The plan was terrifying in its audacity. I had to deceive the two people who were deceiving me. I had to weaponize my own perceived weakness. "How long?" I asked. "A week, maybe 2. I need to draft this precisely. In the meantime, Nancy, you perform. Can you do that?" I looked at my garden, at the roses fighting through weeds. "Yes," I said, "I can." And so I began the greatest performance of my life. The next time Gloria brought up Rosewood Manor, I didn't change the subject. I looked at the brochure with a sad, vacant expression. "It does look peaceful," I murmured, "and the gardens are so tidy." I let a tear well up. "Maybe you're right, Gloria. Maybe this old house is too much for me now." When Larry brought up the power of attorney again, I clutched his hand. "Oh, Larry, would you? All these numbers and papers. They give me such a headache. I just want to feel safe. You make me feel safe." The words tasted like ash in my mouth, but I saw the triumph flash in his eyes, quickly masked by concern. "I forgot Anna's name once." I asked Larry the same question about the water bill 3 times in an hour. I let a cup of tea slip from my hand, shattering on the floor, and burst into helpless tears. They ate it up. Their solicitousness took on a new, almost giddy quality. They spoke in hushed tones in the kitchen, thinking I was napping on the couch. I heard snippets. "By the end of the month, clean out the attic first. She'll be happier there." The loneliness was a cavern inside me. To be surrounded by people, and yet more isolated than I had ever been, was a special kind of torture. But the photograph of Gloria's lavender notepaper was the lock screen on my phone. It was my fuel. My rage was no longer a hot fire. It was a block of ice, cold and solid and patient. The call from Sam came 10 days later. "It's ready," he said, no greeting. "I've spoken to the notary, a colleague of mine named Irene. She's on board. Larry has an appointment with his own lawyer, a Mr. Driscoll, tomorrow at 3 p.m. I've ensured that Driscoll will recommend they get the document notarized immediately to secure things. Irene will be at the Notary Public office on Elm Street at 3:30. You need to get Larry to bring you there." The stage was set. That evening, Larry came to me with a thick document. "It's all ready, sweetheart," he said, his voice oozing reassurance. "My attorney Robert looked it over. It just lets me take care of you and the house. Nothing to worry about. We just need to sign it and get it notarized. I made an appointment for tomorrow." I made my eyes go wide and fearful at the sheaf of papers. "It's so much," I whispered, letting my hands flutter weakly. Gloria, who was perched on the arm of the sofa, swooped in. "It's just legal stuff, Nance. Standard. Larry's got it under control. This is for your own good. Think of it as letting us shoulder the burden." I let my shoulders slump and surrender. "Okay," I said, my voice small. "If you think it's best." I'm so tired of thinking. I reached out and squeezed Larry's hand. "You'll take care of everything." He beamed. Everything. The following day, Larry helped me dress, treating me with a clumsy tenderness that once would have moved me. Now I saw it as a handler preparing his charge for inspection. We drove to a generic office building. In a small windowless room, a stern-looking man in a suit, Robert Driscoll, explained the document in broad, simplistic terms. I nodded along, playing the part of the overwhelmed wife. Driscoll's eyes barely met mine. His attention was on Larry, his client. Afterwards, Larry said, "Just one more stop, honey." The notary. We drove to the address on Elm. The office was small, clean, and empty except for a woman in her 60s with intelligent eyes behind stylish glasses. This was Irene. She introduced herself with a professional smile that didn't quite reach her eyes when she looked at me. She understood. She placed the document before me. "Mrs. Evans, my role is to verify your identity and ensure you are signing this document willingly and under your own cognizance. Do you understand the nature of this durable power of attorney?" I looked from her to Larry, who gave me an encouraging nod. I summoned every ounce of my performance. I let my gaze seem slightly unfocused. I think so. It's so Larry can help me, because of my leg and my confusion. I let the last word hang pathetic and weak. "Do you understand that it grants him broad authority over your financial and medical decisions?" Irene pressed her voice gentle but firm, following a script she and Sam had devised. I looked at Larry with what I hoped was a blend of trust and dependency. "Yes," I said softly, pouring every ounce of bitter irony into the next words. "Because he loves me." I saw Irene's jaw tighten almost imperceptibly. She nodded. "Please sign and date here." My hand, which wanted to dash off a furious signature, moved slowly, shakily. I signed my name, Nancy Elizabeth Evans, with a slight tremor. Larry signed after me, his signature bold and confident. Irene stamped and signed the document, completing the legal facade. In the car ride home, Larry could barely contain his elation. He called Gloria on speakerphone. "It's done," he said, victory ringing in his voice. Gloria's laugh tinkled through the speakers. "Fantastic, okay, phase 2. I'll call Rosewood and confirm the suite for the 1st of next month. We should start packing up the non-essentials this weekend. The good china, the silver, we can put it in storage until we decide what to do with it." "Agreed," Larry said, glancing at me. I had my head resting against the window, eyes closed, feigning sleep. "The market is hot. We list the house as soon as she's settled. A quick sale split the proceeds cleanly. It's all falling into place." "Poor Nancy," Gloria said, her voice dripping with a false pity that made my skin crawl. "She'll be so much better off without the stress of that big old house." They continued discussing my life, my home, my possessions, as if I were already gone. And in the pocket of my cardigan, my smartphone set to voice memo quietly captured every damning word. The waiting was the hardest part. For 2 days, I watched them move through my house like excited prospectors on a new claim. They brought in boxes. They pointed at furniture, debating its value. I stayed in my role, drifting from room to room like a ghost, nodding vacantly at their plans. The ice block of rage within me grew heavier, colder. On the 3rd morning, a Monday, Larry and Gloria left together to, as Gloria put it, finalize the arrangements with Rosewood and meet with a realtor. The moment their car disappeared down the driveway, I moved. I did not call Sam. I called the local county sheriff's office. Not the general line, but the direct number for Sheriff Ben Miller, a man who had gone to high school with my late brother and who still every Christmas sent a card. His secretary put me through. "Ben, it's Nancy Evans. Nancy Pearson, that was. I need your help at my house on Laurel Lane. It's urgent and it's quiet. Can you come? And can you bring someone from Adult Protective Services?" There was no hesitation in his voice, just calm authority. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, Nancy." Next, I called Sam. "Today," I said. "They've gone to secure the nursing home slot and the realtor. They'll be back in a few hours." "I'm on my way with Irene and the file," he replied. I then did something I had not done in months. I put away my cane. I stood in the center of my living room and I walked. slowly, deliberately, through each room. The strength was there, built in secret during my sessions with Anna, who had become a conspirator in my physical recovery, if not aware of the full truth. The pain was a distant throb, irrelevant. I was not an invalid. I was a homeowner about to reclaim her property. Sheriff Ben arrived first, his cruiser parked discreetly behind the house. He was a large, quiet man with kind eyes that missed nothing. A serious-looking woman from APS named Carol accompanied him. I showed them the photographs on my phone. I played them the audio recording from the car. I watched Ben's face harden, his affable demeanor replaced by professional granite. Sam and Irene arrived minutes later, carrying a briefcase thick with legal countermeasures. We were ready. An hour later, we heard the car pull up, the cheerful slam of doors, the sound of Larry and Gloria laughing as they approached the front door. They burst in their faces, alight with triumph, and froze. The scene in their living room was not the one they expected. Sheriff Miller stood by the fireplace, his stance official. Carol from APS sat in an armchair, a notepad on her knee. Sam and Irene were on the sofa. And I, Nancy, was standing, not leaning, not hobbling, but standing by the bay window, my back straight, my hands clasped calmly in front of me. Larry's smile dissolved into confusion, then a dawning, sickly understanding. Gloria's hand flew to her mouth. Lawrence Evans, Gloria Prentice. Sheriff Miller began, his voice filling the room. We need to have a conversation about a very serious matter. The planning and attempted fraud of a vulnerable adult, which is a felony in the state of Oregon. What is this? Larry blustered, his eyes darting to me. Nancy, what's going on? Are you okay? It was Sam who spoke next, his voice like chilled steel. Sit down, Lawrence. You too, Gloria. We have a lot to discuss. Starting with the fraudulent power of attorney you coerced Nancy into signing, which I might add is null and void, due to material misrepresentation and our notary's affidavit of concern regarding Mrs. Evans's capacity at the time of signing, which we have on video. Irene gave a small, sharp nod. Carol from APES held up a digital recorder. We also have evidence of your conversations regarding the unlawful conversion of Mrs. Evans's assets, specifically the planned sale of this home and the sequestration of her funds following a forced institutionalization. The color drained from their faces. Gloria began to cry, but they were tears of fury and panic, not remorse. She's confused. She doesn't know what she's doing. She's sick. That's when I took my step forward. The first real step. I walked without a limp, without hesitation, to stand before them. The room was silent. I looked at my husband of 35 years, at the sister I had helped raise. I saw not love, but a raw, greedy terror. You planned to send me away and take everything, I said, my voice low but clear, carrying in the stillness. You drew your maps and made your phone calls. You thought the woman who loved her garden was too weak to protect it. I looked at Larry. You forgot this house. This land is in my name. A gift from my parents. You have no claim. I turned to Gloria. And you, my own sister, you appraise my life like one of your properties, a thing to be liquidated. I reached into the folder Sam had prepared. I handed Larry a set of papers. This is a petition for dissolution of marriage. Given the circumstances of fraud and attempted financial abuse, my attorney advises me you have no grounds to contest the terms which grant you none of my separate property. Sign it, or Sheriff Miller will formally charge you both this afternoon. I handed Gloria another set. This is a temporary restraining order. It forbids you from coming within 500 feet of me or this property. It is based on the evidence of your conspiracy to defraud me. A permanent order will follow. Larry looked at the divorce papers, his hands shaking. Nancy, please. We can talk about this. It was a mistake. No. I said the single word final. There is nothing to talk about. Get out of my house. Take only the clothes you came with. Everything else stays. Now. They left under the watchful eyes of Sheriff Miller. There were no dramatics, no final pleas. They were hollowed out, defeated by the very carefully laid trap they had walked into. I watched from the window as their car, now loaded only with their personal luggage, retreated down the driveway for the last time. The aftermath was a quiet, methodical unraveling of their lives and a slow, deliberate rebuilding of my own. Legally, things moved with a swift, satisfying finality. Confronted with the evidence, the photos, the audio, the notary's testimony, and the looming threat of felony charges, Lawrence capitulated. He signed the divorce papers, agreeing to a settlement that involved no alimony and a clean division of only the few assets we had truly acquired together. His reputation in the local financial advisory circle was ruined. Word travels fast in a small city like Portland. He moved to another state shortly after. Gloria fought the restraining order, hiring a slick lawyer who tried to paint me as paranoid and unstable. But the evidence was undeniable. The judge made the order permanent. The state's real estate licensing board launched an investigation into her ethics based on Sam's complaint. She lost her license 6 months later. The last I heard, she was working as a receptionist at a car dealership. We have not spoken. In the physical silence they left behind, I found my breath again. My first act was to call Anna and tell her the truth. She cried, hugged me fiercely, and became more than my therapist. She became a steadfast friend. She helped me regain not just the strength in my ankle, but the strength to walk through my own home without fear. I hired a young man named Leo, a horticulture student, to help me with the garden. We did not tame its wildness. We curated it. We pulled the weeds the neglect had allowed, pruned back the overgrown roses, and planted new lavender. The work was healing my hands in the earth, reclaiming what was mine. I turned Lawrence's old office into a sunroom. I had the dark wood bookshelves removed and the walls painted a soft, buttery yellow. I filled it with my father's old horticulture books, a comfortable reading chair, and my mother's rocking chair. The space no longer smelled of sandalwood and ambition. It smelled of paper sunshine and the potted jasmine I placed by the window. The money, my inheritance, and savings remained intact. Sam helped me restructure everything, putting safeguards in place I had never considered before. I set up a trust. I learned to read my own statements. Financial literacy, I discovered, was a profound form of self-defense. The loneliness did visit, especially in the evenings, but it was a different loneliness. It was not the oppressive, smothering loneliness of being betrayed in plain sight. It was a spacious, sometimes aching solitude. I filled it with audiobooks, with long phone calls to old friends I had neglected, with learning to cook the elaborate recipes I had always been too busy to try. I even joined a book club at the local library, the very one I used to manage. Walking back through those doors as a patron, not an employee, felt like a homecoming, healing. I learned it's not a straight line, it is more like the growth in my garden. Some days were full of sun and progress. Other days, a memory would rise like a stubborn weed, and I would have to sit with the hurt all over again. I started seeing a therapist, a wise woman named Dr. Levinson, who helped me untangle the knots of betrayal, the guilt I felt for not seeing it sooner, and the fear of ever trusting again. The biggest lesson did not come in a blinding flash. It settled on me gradually, like the first quiet snow of winter. I learned that trust is not a mandatory offering you give to family or to years spent together. It is a gift earned and renewed every single day. And revoking that gift is not an act of cruelty. It is the ultimate act of self-respect. I had confused vulnerability with weakness for so long. I thought needing help meant surrendering authority. They preyed on that confusion. But even the most delicate bloom has its defenses. Thorns, resilience, a deep, stubborn root structure that holds fast to the earth. I found mine. It was not in dramatic confrontations, but in a single strategic phone call, in the patient, silent gathering of proof, in the courage to play a humiliating part to win a vital war. I protected myself, and in doing so, I gave myself a future. Now, when I sit on my porch in the evenings, watching the bees hover over the lavender and the roses finally blooming without hindrance, I do not feel fear about what is to come. I feel a deep, unshakable quiet, the kind of peace that only comes when the noise of other people's agendas finally falls silent and you are left with the simple, solid truth of your own life. My story is not about vengeance, though justice was served. It is about sovereignty. It is about the profound freedom that can only be claimed when you decide once and for all that your life is not anyone else's to manage to sell or to discard. So I will leave you with this question, one I still ponder some nights. Have you ever had a moment where you realized that the greatest act of love for yourself was to build a fence where you once had an open door? If this story resonated with you, if it reminded you of your own strength, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Let me know where you are watching from. Your stories matter. If you found value in this, please give this video a like. It helps others find it, and subscribe to the channel for more conversations about finding our footing at any age. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being part of this quiet corner of the internet. Be kind to yourselves and always, always tend to your own garden. Good night.